Hey, what's up? Nick Nevada here. I hope you're doing well. I'm talking to you from audio today, not doing a talking head video like my last video uploaded, because I'm feeling called to experiment with some different ways of putting out some content for creatives to see what I like and maybe what an audience could possibly like. So I'm being experimental here. I imagine I'll just be trying a few different approaches and seeing what sticks. So this is a combination of me freestyle talking and me doing some writing that I put together on the back end. So if you're watching this, then you'll probably see that I'm doing some sketch notes on the screen to complement the audio, and I'll put a link in the description so that you can download these notes too, if you'd like. One thing I thought about in this approach is that I get to practice two things. One, sharing messages or thoughts that are personally present and relevant, and two, practicing taking visual notes to my own content that yields me both skill development and a personal portfolio piece. So that's why I'm trying this, which makes me think. I have a sketchnote portfolio, what I call graphic recording of client work on my website. And there's some cool examples there, but most of the content isn't related to what I'd personally want to talk about here. So having this skill, I can take these visual notes I know to any content out there in the form of podcast, interviews, or videos. But these days I'm finding I want the time I spend on personally created content that isn't client work to factor in this angle of listening to and creating from what I call intuitive insight or soul truth pretty heavily, or I'm just not as interested. Then, throw in this unique journey I've been on living as a creative and artist and being interested and invested in entrepreneurial ways of making a living, and I can't really find much, so I'm going to make that content myself and create notes from it that I can put in my portfolio. I've seen business content out there that talks about the best practices of marketing or sales. And sure, artists can apply that, but in my experience, listening to intuition isn't rooted in following these rules or quote unquote steps to business success. It's more about receiving adaptable guidance within and making fluid choices that factor in everything going on in my complete reality at the same time. And then this helps me take the next step, which may be business related or not, and that moves my complete reality forward. And so when others share their steps or systems, it doesn't seem to always fully apply to a real-time life in reality related to building something personally relevant as guided by my own connection to myself, save for maybe in pieces here and there, or when it's just time to focus on that. I've also noticed not much seems to exist out there that factors in listening to yourself over following a bunch of rules or systems, or plugging yourself into a very particular art role so that you can make money or get the job. I know that there are many times I could have done this by focusing on a particular role, kind of the classic, the riches are in the niches approach, and actually made a lot more money by pressing on the accelerator of how to be successful. And during those times, I chose not to do that because it didn't feel like it was time to do that, because something else is more important, even though logically my mind and body was screaming, go make that money, it's there for the taking. And so I've learned that I think there's a big difference between plugging myself into a role and getting results versus taking on roles as they emerge in time while being dedicated to listening to what feels like it's the most true thing in my reality as my entire life adapts and conforms around that. So I know that there's plenty of info for artists and business, but nothing in the creative art world that puts being yourself as much as possible at the center of it all, and having that be the driving force of both art and business. And so to my point today, and what I'd like to get into, these sketch notes that you're watching on the screen, what I call graphic recording, they're a service I offer that clients have paid a good amount of money for. Now, I've done it for several years. I've also thought about sharing my thoughts from the angle of a successful event illustrator. But the truth is, when I'm doing professional work and taking notes for clients, my personal opinionated voice isn't that involved, save for some drawings here and there. And when I'm at home like I am now and I think about talking to someone else out there, I'm not too interested in doing that through the angle of working with the client or client voices. Not because those that I work for aren't talking about meaningful things and doing meaningful work, but because my own voice and creativity doesn't seem motivated to share messages from any specific, what I'll call money-making art roles in my freelance business. It doesn't mean I won't ever do that, but I've noticed it has actually been a hindrance to the idea of me sharing what's present for me. But it also seems like it's been a meaningful hindrance because it wasn't quite time for me to share anything anyway. And so right now, I'm more interested in communicating from the weight of personal self-knowledge, my own authority that I've gained from my personal lived experience as a whole human with particular thoughts, emotions, and values, and my years of experience listening to and honoring what I call my soul alongside the process of making art and earning money as an artist. When I look, quote unquote, out there at large, I see that living as a creative or artist who's making money and building a career entrepreneurially or in the job world, the authority of the messaging seems to mostly get mixed in or rooted with financial success, position, or skill sets. And all of that is actually necessary and fine. And those are things we want in some form. I'm sure all of us do. But I feel like there's a big gap that needs to be filled behind all that stuff, especially for those that may think of themselves like I did or do as a sensitive artist type that got into creating art because, you know, you were looking to express something good and pure, things that can get buried and forgotten behind all the striving to fit in, keep up, and be a part of the world. So instead, I'd like to start sharing from this angle of really intending and working to listen to yourself, to your soul, for what you create, how you create, why you create, when you create, who you create it for, and treating yourself behind the scenes with the utmost respect as you learn about how you genuinely function in reality, while also learning about what reality actually is to the best of your ability, and being patient with the time, energy, and money it takes to do that. For this message today, I want to dive in a little bit deeper from the money angle. For 15 years, I've lived a pretty interesting creative career with times where I was both climbing what I'll call money mountains and then going through the dips of money valleys, both really good times and really hard, crappy times. And in both of these times, there have been instances where money gets positioned as this savior that would make everything better. If only I had more. And those times when I've been fixated on money and got caught up in, this is the meaning of living as an artist, making money with art, I've noticed that when I did eventually make money, after being uncertain I was going to, that at some point the same cycle would start up again. Money became an ambiguous carrot. And when that carrot was gone, it was time to chase another carrot. But these carrots only scratched a certain itch until at some point it was like, is there more to making a living as an artist than just making money with art and living an artist's life? It was eventually always a little empty and a bit of a low-level misery would come creeping in. This is where what I call the soul, luckily, started to burst in on me. This deeper and realer piece of me wanted more than money. It wanted time. It wanted rest. It wanted space. It wanted the freedom to learn. It wanted silence. And it wanted what felt like the world had taken from me with its empty money promises. And it wanted to feel free because, well, even when I did make good money working as an artist, it still didn't scratch the deeper itch I had of wanting to feel the full freedom of being myself. And in some ways, that was really, really confusing because in the end, my soul wanted something different. While the world was offering and promising, do what you love and make money at it, Johnny, as some sort of like pre-made menu item. Granted, it is a unique menu item, but it still gets sparkly packaging wrapped around it. And so over time, it's become clearer and clearer to me that making a living as an artist for me was in no way only about filling art roles and making money with art. Those things are there, they're necessary, and they will remain there in some form or fashion. But art roles are not things that are promised or will necessarily last, especially with the world and future that seem more uncertain out there these days than they have in a while for a lot of people. So as much as people out there or the world tells you that there is certainty in predefined paths and structures, it's ultimately not actually true. It's just temporarily true. It doesn't mean some things won't remain, but it's not in stone. It's more true that we just don't know, and that certainty has to start with what you know to be true right now. And then you can continue to go from there, always with the willingness to adapt as life as a whole unfolds. But you have to value what's right and true, and that in my experience, only comes from the soul, not the world. So, though living like this does take a good amount of time to learn to really align with, if what I'm saying to you resonates in any way whatsoever, I can bet that you do have the beginnings, or probably much more than that, to this access to trusting yourself and can begin right now, completely good as you are, without having to change or fix anything about yourself, your life, or your art at all, until you know it's time to. Where this brings my message today to you is to a place where I can say that any art role I participate in, or any money I make as an artist, or also doing something non-art related, such as what I do right now, which is row gondolas a couple days a week, is going to serve the piece of me that is looking for the best fit to the puzzle of my life, looking to put my voice and sense of peace first and not have money overshadow that. This way of something isn't something I can say that I've fully planned out, but it is something I've been led into and actually just now simultaneously prefer. And it's not actually always a convenient place to be. It can be kind of hard, but at the foundation of this is trusting what feels right and true. I also can see that living in this quote-unquote soul orientation, trusting it and living it out fully, and allowing it to encompass my art career, has really personally loosened how I also feel about two particular labels I'm sure you've heard out there. Specifically, I'm talking about the label of the starving artist, and on the other side, the full-time artist. These are two labels and roles that can become noisy chains that can obscure listening to your inner voice, because in both camps, money is that sure savior that psychologically gets tied up with both misery and fantasy, which both rely on fixed visions and beliefs of life that your mind locks into in relation to your life and art path. When I look at both labels and having experienced my own forms of both, where they seem to lead is to mental justifications that give more power to money as a structure than to your own internal knowing inside of either potential label on your situation. And yeah, I've had to learn to listen to that inner knowing over any label. On the starving artist side, when money is tight and hope seems dim, I've noticed my knowing sounds something like, hey, this is hard, but deep down I know I should keep going. It still feels right even though I'm struggling. I'm just squeezing by and I do fit the bill of the starving artist. There is some misery here too. I could stop doing this and get a real full-time job that has nothing to do with what I want, but I kind of know that is a rogue direction that will just put off what I want to get to anyway. But yeah, it's hard to look out there and see others living their lives with all this security and abundance. I hope this works out, and I don't really know if it will, but I think something good will come out of this. I just don't know what it is, but what I'm doing seems right, at least for right now. And I just want to say, in my experience, that this knowing is enough. It's actually completely trustable. And learning to feel into and sense the truth of what's happening on my path has really helped me slough off that particular starving artist label. It has no place in this home. Because I'm living my life right here, I'm doing it. I'm taking my risk and the lumps that come with them. And I'm really trying here. And that is satisfying in ways I can't find if I'm not leaning on my knowing. And well, I've been in that place for a time, years at some points, and things did eventually change quite a bit. And I wasn't a quote-unquote starving artist anymore. I was more in the camp of the quote-unquote full-time artist, as I was financially resourced and getting paid to make art. But then I noticed I kind of lost contact with that still small voice within, or I stopped listening to it, in exchange for the security, comfort, and the status that came with earning money with art. A kind of proving energy of compensation swang through, and it kind of sounded like, see, I can make money with art, take that. And that became louder than my actual voice. I mean, I hate to say it, but money became an idol and the truth moved to the background. But I don't think these times have been bad. They're just really good learning times to reflect back on and take note of how, number one, I wasn't really capable of actually following what was true when that first happened, because making money was a savior to me in some way when I first experienced a balance of making art and money. And then number two, in hindsight, I can look back and see how money seduced me away from a deeper, more real knowing in exchange for a promise at living out some kind of future fantasy that a bottom wouldn't fall out of. But it was still just art and life in the end, with all of its limitations and time constraints anyway. And so now that knowing on the full-time artist side, when I am making steady money with art, will sound something more like, I'm trying to find a better voice for this here, something that distinguishes me from the regular talking. Hey, it's great that I'm making money again, especially with my art. I'm lucky. I worked hard for this, and I should enjoy this. But Nick, you gotta know that money isn't always the most important thing in your reality at any given time. It is sometimes, and you'll know that. And then things could change up on a dime, and you gotta look at something else, even if money goes down your list of priorities. And especially when life is trying to get you to a place where you feel more alive and balanced on the whole, and aren't putting all your eggs in an uncertain financial basket. So don't get too pigeonholed or seduced to think that this is it. No, it's listening to yourself, and who knows where that could take you. You just have to see. Don't know if I like that voice, but we'll leave it in there. And to start to kind of wrap my thoughts on both of these labels and the experiences that overlap with them, I've found that in both instances, there's some kind of belief that things will continue to go on as they are. It's either, my life as an artist will always be hell, I just can't have that, it's time to bail. Or, if I just keep making more money with art and I adapt to the world and its rules as best I can to do that, the more that I create in the future will definitely bring me that deeper satisfaction I'm looking for. What doesn't get seen on the side of the starving artist as they take on that label is that there will and can be real relief, peace, satisfying change, and liberating personal evolution that actually loosens money's bitch-like grip on you as you become more internally certain, strong, and can rely on something truly real and fulfilling, your own soul, and let that guide your art and money journey, which you will grow into. And on the full-time artist label side, what doesn't get seen is that money can't fill the hole of the soul, no matter how much you throw into it, or even if it's with your art. It's a separate journey, the soul one, and it takes the courage to let go of the programming of money fixes and fulfills everything. It's more about you than even your art and the money you make with it. And once you know more about who you are, who you want to be, and what you want to express, money can rearrange to its proportionate place in your psychology. The choices you make, what you actually value, and how you choose to spend your time will change when you stop lying to yourself and get real about the actual reality you are inside of. So there is some good news here for those that are closer to that label of the starving artist and are worried they can't make money with their art. I'm going to give you a little clapback energy here. For one, who gives a crap about the label? The people who say it and leverage that against you and instill fear into you about your choice to do art and make money with it. Because one, they don't know shit about prioritizing what they love over the flash of money or status and are terrified of hard things in a temporary life anyhow. And two, anyone who is leveling that label at you as a negative insult is likely living a starving life of their own, no matter how much BS fluff they built up in the nest of their soulfully empty life. And second, you don't have the psychological overhead that someone who is already succeeding may have. In short, the world's programming hasn't sunk its tentacles into your external circumstances, binding you to them and making it even tougher to listen to yourself at ground zero. This is a massive advantage, and if you stay true to yourself in relation to your art and career, it's only up, and you will figure it out as you go. It won't always be miserable. And then the misery piece, it gets misplaced and related to being a starving artist, but I don't find that I've been only miserable because things are hard or I was having a tough time with art and money making. I've been miserable because I put my trust in money over the knowing that I'll be okay and that a low level of money doesn't actually mean I'm in real danger. I'm actually held with real guidance when I'm in touch with my soul, and I can feel a larger presence and its wisdom in giving me tough situations to grow and develop within. And the money that I do need in those realities does show up in some way. I've actually found some of my harder times to be some of the best incubation periods for building capability for what I'm growing into next, and having more money would have taken me away from what was already really present that needed my attention. Sure, there are and have been actual tough times where it's painful and I'm being guided to do something about it and make a change. But there are other times where I'm just having a visceral bodily reaction to being programmed with the fear of death, or that things won't change or get better because I'm having some current financial insecurity or struggles. And for the full-time artist, I'd posit this challenge. What happens if your personal well-being and sense of safety and your psychology is wholly dependent on numbers in your bank account? And then the world changes or your income dries up. Any fantasy you had about your life will die with it. I know, because it happened to me when a stable art job ended and threw me into crisis. It sucked when I realized I was living a lie, seduced by the money I was making with my art. And my real reasons for art making suffered a good amount because of it. I remember back, and my motivation to rebound and make money with art got rooted in a sort of manic depression. And that was a pretty terrible place to make the kind of art or the quality of art I wanted to make from. I ultimately had to do non-art things alongside that time because it didn't work for me to put that much pressure on my creative self, and actually got more fulfillment from not making money with my art during a several-year period while I worked to dig deeper into what was really true for me, find new direction, and then reemerge with my art and money making with it in a different way. To summarize things in a nice little bow, in my experience, defining money as the only metric of authority quickly binds you to a circumstantial heaven or hell that makes you awesome for following the rules and being a good, responsible, successful person, or it makes you wrong for being who you actually are and making a gargantuan effort to live from what's true. And that's bullshit. And in no way do you have to get stuck in any extreme of any sort. There is always some wiggle room to figure out how things work best for you right now. I've found that intuition offers up an open space for me to get right with a deeper knowing about reality as a whole, and it guides me inside of a reality based on what's actually good and true for me, always. It may not be convenient or easy, but I know it's right. And so if you tap into that intuition of yours, it won't sell you a fantasy or beat you up because you're having a hard time. It will help you right where you're at. And it will help you one step at a time. And the more you give the reins of your art and life to it, the more artful and maybe very different than you thought it would be, but still good, your life can be. I call it living artfully, and that's my own label. I've heard the label life is art, and I'd agree with that too, as I think that is in the direction of what I'm speaking about. And so to artists or creatives who feel like they're in a jam, like their art will never take them anywhere and you just feel stupid or lost, I'd say, don't ever let the world rob you of your fulfillment and your internal compass. If you learn to lean on and trust that over time, you will see that things will begin to make more sense, especially as you fully grow as a person alongside making your art, or hell, even stepping away from it if you need to and coming back when it's more right. And you may be doing something completely different then, who knows? So yeah, there's a lot there. Okay, so I think that's it for today. Thanks for listening to my voice experiment and watching the visuals on the screen if you have. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on some of these things, and if you have anything to share with me, please feel free to do so. All right, I'm out of here. Peace.